After World War II was over, major German war criminals were tried at Nuremberg, but some war criminals weren't tried. In this video we're going to talk about a specific category. We're going to talk about the German scientists. These were rounded up by the United States and were working for the Americans from that point on. The name for this operation was Operation Paperclip, and in this video we're going to talk about that. In 1943, the German leaders, they knew they were losing the war. They had to find another solution. And for that, scientists, engineers and technicians were called up to perform a scientific solution for the war. In other words, they had to conduct research so the Germans could make weapons, Wunderwaffe, so they could win the war. The Austenberg List was a list with all the names of scientists that had to work for the war's effort and were ideologically approved. One of the prominent persons on this list was a rocket scientist Wernher von Braun. The British and Americans worked together in the Combined Intelligence Objectives Subcommittee, CIOS, with the goal to investigate German science. The list got in the hands of the US intelligence in March 1945. To them, it was important that these scientists had to be captured alive. Operation Paperclip began in May 1945. Operation Paperclip was a post-war US intelligence program that brought German scientists to America under secret military contracts. Under Operation Paperclip, which began in May of 1945, the scientists who helped the Third Reich wage war continued their weapons-related work for the US government, developing rockets, chemical and biological weapons, aviation and space medicine for enhancing military pilot and astronaut performance, and many other armaments at the feverish and paranoid pace that came to define the Cold War. After Germany was defeated, the hunt for the Nazi scientists was opened, and this operation was named Operation Overcast. Now, do notice here that in the summer of 1945, the US was still at war with Japan. So the idea was that these German military scientists had to conduct research so the Americans could make stronger weapons to defeat the Japanese. In hindsight, we know that the Americans defeated the Japanese in August 1945, but many believe the war with Japan would continue much longer than that and perhaps end in 1946 or later. When Japan was defeated, the new adversary became the USSR, and thus the German scientists had to continue their research for the Americans. They had to outclass USSR technology, and Operation Paperclip officially started in November 1945. A total of 1,600 were recruited. In her book Operation Paperclip, Annie Jacobsen elaborates on 21 German scientists who worked for the Americans. 8 of these, among which Wernher von Braun, had worked closely with either Hitler, Himmler or Göring. 15 out of 21 were dedicated members of the Nazi Party. 10 of these had also joined either the SA or the SS, these ultra-violent paramilitary organizations. 6 of them stood trial at Nuremberg. Only 1 was convicted of mass murder and slavery, served some time in prison, was granted clemency, and then was hired by the US Department of Energy. They came to America at the behest of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Some officials believed that by endorsing the Paperclip program, they were accepting the lesser of two evils, that if America didn't recruit these scientists, the Soviet communists surely would. Other generals and colonels respected and admired these men and said so. The Soviets on their turn took over 2,000 German specialists in the Operation Overcast. It's here. The Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, GIOA, was responsible for Operation Paperclip. for recruiting and employing the Nazi scientists within the US Army, Navy, Air Force, the CIA, and other organizations. In several cases, it turned out that these scientists had been too close to Hitler, so therefore they weren't brought to the US, but they were employed in West Germany. The GIOA was a subcommittee of the Joint Intelligence Committee, GIC, which gave information about national security to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a body that advised the US government on military matters. To get an idea of their mindset, realize the following. Within 1 year of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the GIC warned the Joint Chiefs of Staff that the United States needed to prepare for total war with the Soviets, to include atomic, chemical and biological warfare, and they even set an estimated start date of 1952. By that time, war between the US and the Soviet Union hadn't broken out, but there was war on the Korean Peninsula. Operation Paperclip left behind a legacy of missiles, gas bombs, bunkers, space capsules and chemical weapons. To the public, it was said that these Nazi scientists weren't fanatical Nazis, that these were the good Germans. But in reality, this was not the case. Obviously, not all German scientists were fanatical Nazis also. One of the worst case scenarios was Walter Schreiber, a Surgeon General of the Third Reich who, after the war, worked at a military base in Texas. During the war, he was involved in the German vaccine program to make German soldiers immune to their own biological weapons that would also be developed. Most famous was, earlier mentioned, Wernher von Braun, who became the head of the US rocket program. During the war, he had worked on the V rockets, in which countless prisoners had performed slave labor in the Mittelbrau-Dora concentration camp under abysmal conditions, and many had perished, not to mention those who became victims of the V2 rockets. Another scientist, Kurt H. Debus, a former V2 rocket specialist, eventually became a NASA director. Thanks to my patrons, and a special thanks to Peter King, Tanya Dixie, Henry Clarkson, Rob Park, RL, and Colin Castleman. And a big shout out to RL, dedicated patron, who also provided me with the research material, so thank you so much for that. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let me know what you thought of it. If you want to know more about the Korean War, I made a video about that, it's right here. And if you start thinking of typing a comment, hey dude, make an episode about the German wonder weapons, which I actually already did, it's right here. Thank you so much for watching. I see you later.